It Can't Happen Here is a novel by Sinclair Lewis, an American author. In that book, this is the first edition, this is my binding of the first edition from 1935. In that novel, the protagonist is a newspaper editor in Vermont. And when a guy runs for office as president who's kind of like a buffoon and a populist, and nobody thinks he's going to win, but he wins the election. This is 1935, and he wrote this. And remember, this is the time when Mussolini and Hitler were on the rise. And he forms a fascist state. And when they send representatives of the corpos, because everything was done for the benefit of corporations and all laws were passed to benefit corporations. It Can't Happen Here is the title of the book, right? And in 1935. And when they send representatives in the newspaper office to make sure that he only prints their news, the way it's the true news, he and his associates steal an old hand printing press from the basement of the newspaper office and some 8-point type, because they don't use it anymore. They used to use it to print pamphlets, but then they got a monotype machine, so they didn't need it. So they stole it a pocketful at a time. They stole the type. And they printed a pamphlet called Vermont Vigilance that had what the corpos were doing. They had articles like, how many people have the corpos murdered? Like that. Now, this is a fictional pamphlet. How did I have it as the end paper in my book? Because in April, when I was artist in residence at the Rochester Institute of Technology's Cary Graphic Arts Collection, which owns the Albion hand printing press built in 1885 that William Morris bought in 1886 to print the Kelmscott Chaucer, on that hand printing press, I printed in 8-point Vermont Vigilance, and I made it real to become the end papers of a copy of the first edition that I wanted to bind. And then I bound it. And this is 8-point type. This is what happens after the corpos find where they're printing it. And this is my blood, and there's some acrylic paint, which actually is more blood-like in color because the blood dried kind of brown. And there's the fasces on it. The fasces was actually used on the first edition of the book on its cover, blind stamped. It was during the Depression. It was produced fairly cheaply. The fasces, you know, like in fascism, it was the symbol of the fascist party of Mussolini. It was also on the back of the United States dime from 1916 to 1945. So everybody knew that symbol. They carried it in their pocket. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Can you want to go on your website?